Hello and welcome to our Saturday, March 26, 2022 program. This is Shimelis Gebremichael with UMD News Package for today. We invite you all to stay with the program, and for your feedbacks, please use our email address newstips2020umd at gmail.com. UMD extensively works in understanding, measuring, and doing matters. Our news team attempts to update you with the latest in Ethiopia, the Horn, Africa, and the world in general. Any of your support, including the provision of news tips, comments, questions, and suggestions, are always welcomed. Before we jump into our news packet today, here are the headlines for the major news of the last couple of days. Cautious reception of Ethiopia's humanitarian truce in Tigray. The government of Ethiopia declared an indefinite humanitarian truce in the war-torn Tigray. Many are still monitoring with great suspicion as a single truck not hit the road to Tigray. The government of Tigray reaffirms its commitment in realizing lasting peace in Ethiopia. Millions in Tigray face hunger as they wait in vain for aid. We will look this story in more detail later in this edition. Now we will move into providing more information on these and other news items. As we always say, please do not forget to like and share our programs and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also view our programs in other platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn. We'll now move to the first part of our news package, that is News in Brief. Cautious reception of Ethiopia's humanitarian truce in Tigray. The government of Ethiopia declared an indefinite humanitarian truce in the war-torn Tigray. The ceasefire intends to ensure the free flow of emergency humanitarian aid to all those in need of assistance. The international community, including the UN, the United States, and the UK, welcomes both the government of Ethiopia and Tigray authorities' cessation of hostilities. People of Tigray were deprived of access to food, healthcare, fuel, communications, and banking services. In the statement, the government called on donor community to increase assistance and on Tigrayan forces to withdraw from neighboring regions. Though members of the aid community are optimistic that the truce could result in humanitarian access, they also cautious that government statements haven't always resulted in tangible change on the ground, saying the truce should be extended to all forces involved in the conflict. The government has enforced a de facto blockade on Tigray that has largely halted the delivery of aid, while neighboring regions, Afar and Amhara, have also been pummeled amid the ongoing conflict. The government's blockade was restricted to Tigray. An estimated 9.4 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance in northern Ethiopia. Some people fear the independent truce may become an empty promise and aspire to be implemented soon as every hour and day claiming the lives of innocent civilians. They mention the distance from Afar to Tigray and the existing truce is still standing still despite the fact that 2 days have passed since the announcement was public by the Ethiopian government. The government of Tigray reaffirms, Getachew says the world must condemn human rights abuses in Tigray as it does in Ukraine. A member of the executive committee of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, Getachew Redda, noted that Tigrayans are still brutalized by the Ethiopian and Eritrean forces. Getachew indicated that the Tigrayans deserve justice like what is observed by the international solidarity with Kiev in the face of Russian aggression. According to Getachew, the unprecedented unity of the liberal democratic world against Russia's invasion of Ukraine is admirable. In addition to rallying its allies and broader international community behind Ukraine, the United States made powerful case against Russia in the United Nations Security Council and the UN Human Rights Council. In his well-versed, detailed, and analytical article, Getachew, who also served as Ethiopia's Minister of Communication from 2014 to 2016, called upon the international community to condemn the humanitarian abuses in Tigray. Getachew's full article is found in FP's March 23, 2022 edition. The government of Tigray reaffirms its commitment in realizing lasting peace in Ethiopia. In a statement the government of Tigray issued on the cessation of hostilities, it reaffirms its readiness to resolve current matters through peaceful means. According to the Tigray External Affairs Office, the government of Tigray went to the war without its intent, and it will do everything possible to make sure that the cessation of hostilities is a success. It also called upon the Ethiopian authorities to get beyond empty promises and take concrete steps to facilitate unfettered humanitarian access to Tigray. Rights groups ask Ethiopia to provide Tigray war crime. Human Rights Watch (HRW) on Thursday urged Ethiopia to probe an airstrike on a school in the war-torn Tigray region that killed dozens as an apparent war crime. The rights watchdog said 3 bombs were dropped on January 7 on a school sheltering displaced Tigrayans in the town of Dedebit, killing at least 57 civilians and wounding more than 42 others. HRW said in a statement, the Ethiopian government should carry out a prompt, thorough, and impartial investigation of the apparent war crime and appropriately prosecute those responsible. The conflict has claimed thousands of lives, and both sides have been repeatedly accused of human rights violations and atrocities. In March, UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet reported that at least 304 civilians were killed and 373 injured between late November and late February in aerial bombardments apparently carried out by the Ethiopian military. The US focused on a delivery of humanitarian aid to Ethiopia's Tigray. U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, David Satterfield, told Reuters on Wednesday the top U.S. priority in the region is the delivery of humanitarian aid to Ethiopia's conflict-ravaged Tigray region, where millions are dependent on it. Satterfield said in his first interview since taking the job in January that our efforts are focused squarely on affecting the initiation and sustainment of civilian vital humanitarian assistance to Tigray, as well as maintaining and enhancing our assistance to all other communities in need. Satterfield noted that in the last week, attempts to move assistance to affected communities in Ethiopia's Afar region, which neighbors Tigray, were blocked by local elements out of the deep resentment, distrust of intention on the part of everyone. A United Nations envoy for food aid towards the town of Barhale and other border areas in Afar this week was stormed. The drivers were beaten and the food looted in an area under government control. 3 humanitarian workers told Reuters. Satterfield completed a 2-day trip to Ethiopia this week in a bid to break the diplomatic deadlock between Addis Ababa and the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF). In a similar development, Advocacy Group criticized Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota 18 advocacy organizations have issued a statement criticizing Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota. The organizations have called upon on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to urgently pass ACE 3199, the Ethiopia Peace and Democracy Promotion Act of 2021, and stand up for equality, liberty, democracy, and peace. After highlighting all the atrocities in human rights violations over the last 17 months, the advocacy groups reaffirmed that they would stand ready to continue to partner with members of the Senate. They also call upon all concerned bodies to collectively work towards realizing peace, relief, and accountability. UN says more than half of Somalians are at risk this year. The UN has warned more than half the Somali populations is at risk of severe hunger or starvation this year. Horn of Africa region is facing its driest conditions in decades after three consecutive rainy seasons failed. Aid agencies say only a tiny fraction of the funds needed for food assistance has been raised as the world focuses on humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. Further complicating the response is the political and security situation. The armed group Al Shabaab has been stepping up attacks while the government's been paralyzed by dispute between the president and the prime minister. According to Al Jazeera, the United Nations is warning more than half of Somalia's people are at risk of severe hunger or starvation this year. Fighting resumes in South Sudan, threatens peace agreement. Fresh fighting broke out between rival soldiers in South Sudan, threatening a fragile peace agreement forged with the help of outsiders, including the United States. According to a spokesman for the rival groups, sporadic fighting was reported Thursday in Upper Nile State. Army Major General Lul Rai Kwang, a spokesman of South Sudan's government troops, charged that rival forces, known officially as the Sudan's People Liberation Army in opposition, had declared war in attacking their positions in Longchuk County. Colonel Lam Paul Gabriel, a spokesman for the rival forces, said government troops attacked first. The decision came after government forces were accused of carrying out unprovoked attacks on their rivals' military bases, including cantonment sites in the state of Upper Nile and Unity. And now we will move into one story we have chosen to present to you in more details for today. That is, trying to survive. Millions in Tigray face hunger as they wait in vain for aid. With aid unable to reach the war-torn Ethiopian region for months, hundreds of thousands are in famine-like conditions. Analyzed The Guardian in its Wednesday, March 23, 2022 edition. We will briefly present this story to you, our viewers. Since her brother joined the Tigray Defense Force, Marta Arrafaine's family has received one 50-kilogram bag of wheat. Each household is expected to contribute a man or woman to the war effort, thus losing a breadwinner, but no other rations have reached her family before the war. Aravaini, 27, used to buy clothes from Dubai and Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital, to sell in her hometown of Shire in northwest Tigray. Now she sells peanuts on the streets and depends on the kindness of neighbors to survive. Millions of Tigrayans like her are going hungry. Last year's harvest was marginally better than feared. Recently, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the head of the World Health Organization, said there was nowhere on earth where the health of millions of people was more under threat than in Tigray. US officials estimated about 80% of Tigray's population is still food insecure, up to 15% before war broke out in November 2020. Malnutrition rates have risen to 13% for children under 5 and more than 60% for pregnant and lactating women. Local people say food prices have doubled and, in some cases, have risen by 400%. US officials involved in the relief effort say we do believe that the resilience or the coping mechanisms of the kinds we were looking at early on was higher than what we give credit for them. But at the same time, we will assess that roughly 700,000 people in Tigray are in famine-like conditions. Since July, Tigray's population of about 5.5 million has been under what the UN has described as a de facto blockade imposed by the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. 8 months since the occupying Ethiopian army withdrew from Tigray, less than 10% of the food aid needed has made it to Mekelle, capital of the region, and not one aid truck has arrived in Tigray since mid December. A single road, which winds through the neighboring desert of Afar region, has been cleared for humanitarian convoys. Communication and banking services have been shut down. A shadow economy, from fuel to finance, has filled a part of the gap. More than a third of the population relies on gifts or loans for food, according to a recent World Food Program study. For those receiving funds from outside the region, black market lenders distribute the cash but take double digit commissions. Others rely on smugglers crossing from the neighboring Afar or Amhara regions or for aid workers with permits to bring in small cash allowances. Some resort to bringing bank managers to withdraw money. Guardian's March 23, 2022 opinion piece has touched upon the different social, economic, and political impacts and the challenge. UMD invite you all to read it. Well, with that, we come to the end of the news for today. This has been Shimelis Marisa Gebremichael here at the UMD Media. Please do not forget to like and share our program and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow our programs also through our other platforms to become the first to what's going on in Ethiopia, the Horn, Africa, and the world in general. You can easily reach us via our email address, newstips2020umd@gmail.com. Thank you for watching and have a good one.